Hello, I'm Dustin Reynolds. I'm hoping to be the first double amputee to solo sail around the world. So far I'm about halfway. I sailed from Hawaii to Madagascar. And this is how I do it. Hello, I'm Dustin Reynolds. I'm from Hawaii. I started sailing a few years ago, about 5 years ago. Yeah, I left Hawaii in June of, this would be June of 14. And then I went to Palmyra, Kiribati, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu, New Zealand, Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, and into Australia. I would have liked to take longer, to be honest. The Pacific's still one of my favorite places, and I would have liked to spend another year there. Yeah, I had what I would consider an upper middle class life. I lived in a really nice house and had a nice car and a nice motorcycle. I had a fishing boat. I didn't have to work too much. I owned a carpet cleaning business, a commercial fishing boat, and I worked part-time as a bartender. And well, when was it? 08. It's all right. Yeah, I think 08. October of 08, I was hit by a drunk driver. And so I lost my arm and leg. I was in the hospital for about 17 days, which was pretty good considering I had a punctured spleen, a punctured lung, I had 4 broken ribs, a broken scapula. My stomach had come through my diaphragm, and I vomited into my lungs, called aspirating. And that by itself is a 50-50 survival. And so I was a mess. And in the hospital, they even gave me the opportunity to end my life then. Like they just told me straight up that there's very little chance you're going to survive this. So I had told them no. I said, no, I'll be fine, because I actually had made that decision earlier in the night that I was going to survive. Yeah, earlier in the night when I was actually hit by the truck, I grabbed my phone, which was still in my pocket. The truck continued on and didn't stop. He stopped eventually because the wheel fell off, but not within my vision. So I yelled for help a few times. There was no one there. My cell phone was still in my pocket. I dialed 911, which is what you do in the United States. I don't know what it is the rest of the world. And right before I hit send on the phone, I thought about it because I knew my arm was gone. I couldn't stand up. I tried to stand up to get out of the road, so I knew my foot was badly damaged. And I pushed myself out of the road. And right before I hit send, I thought about it. I was like, what's going to happen now? If I go to the hospital, I'm going to be crippled. My life's going to be completely different, whether or not I even survive. And this thought might have gone on for 5 seconds or who knows how long, but it was there. And but I did obviously hit send, and I called the paramedics and told them where I was, and they came and got me. At that moment is when I decided I was going to fight for it. So when the doctors asked later, it's like, hey, I already made this decision. I'll be okay. What changed was I was bankrupt. My own insurance company sued me for almost $500,000. Since the driver who hit me didn't have very good insurance, and since it was deemed his fault, my insurance didn't pay for it. And this is something that I carried for about 3 years because I needed more medical care. $450,000 US. And that's for 17 days in the hospital. Yeah, so the recovery was financially devastating. And so as I started getting stronger, I started working again. I started cleaning carpets again and trying to get a little bit back to my old life. And I realized I was so far behind that I had no way to pay back anything. I had no way to get back to where I was. And all my equipment was now 3 years out of maintenance, and everything was breaking down, and everything was just that much tougher. And so I declared bankruptcy. I sold both my businesses, which at that, I mean, they weren't worth much at that point. So I think I got a total of like $15,000. And I bought a $12,000 sailboat and decided I was going to go sail around the world. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be the first double amputee to sail around the world. I'd never sailed before, but you know, how hard could it be? And so I bought this $12,000 sailboat, watched some YouTube videos, read a few books, started sailing. I don't know really. It doesn't seem difficult to me. It's probably like everybody else. When things go wrong, it's tough. Like when something breaks and you have to fix it and it's windy and wavy, that's always a pain. But the actual sailing seems to usually be pretty easy. I've never sailed with two hands before, so I don't really know if it's more difficult or not. I imagine it's tougher, but I've gotten used to it. Yeah, this is true. I really enjoy the Cornell books and the Noon site because it actually tells me the places I shouldn't go, and I could go to all the places that aren't on there, and you never see any cruisers, and you get a lot more genuine reception from locals in places where cruisers don't visit. And I just wanted to explore, and same reason I love diving. Like I don't prefer to go with dive masters because I don't want somebody showing me what to look at and clinking their tank and like look at this, look at this. And if you go on Noon site, you see all the places where cruisers go, and they're like, oh, go to this spot and this restaurant and this, and there's just something different about going somewhere and just not knowing what's there, and jumping in the water with the locals, having no idea how they're going to treat you and how they're going to act, and yeah, it's a little bit more exciting to me, I think. So there's a few. My favorite spot for wildlife was Palmyra, which there was a research camp there, and I was able to stay an extra week because I was helping the fish and wildlife guy count booby birds, and it was amazing. I got to stay for 2 weeks, and they fed me breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then all day we would go count booby birds on these islands that nobody was allowed to go to. So we would go out, count boobies about half the day, and then the other half of the day we'd go dive off the reefs, and it was absolutely spectacular. And but that was my favorite place for wildlife. My favorite remote island was Ura which is in northern Vanuatu, and they get a supply ship every 3 to 6 months. There's no cell phones, there's no satellite, and when I went there, they hadn't seen a cruising yacht in over a year. But but the village was completely welcoming, and they bring you in, and the kids were showing me all over the island and climbing the coconut trees and getting veggies, and we all went out diving together. Like we went out spearfishing, and I gave them a couple dive lights to use while we were out because they'd like to go at night, which is not as sporting as it is during the day. And but it was just amazing to be part of the village. And at the end of it, like, and this actually, coincidentally, is a bow that the chief's son gave me. And so I gave the chief's son like sunglasses and T-shirts and books and pens and random things out of the boat on the boat. And he gave me that bow on my last day. He was just like, "Oh, I want you to have this," because I told him I was going to the Solomon Islands, and they know that there's piracy there. He's like, "Oh, you need something to protect yourself." So I'm not sure how he expected me to use the bow with one hand, but the gesture was quite nice. And even when I left, you know, they were crying and just giving me vegetables and stuff. And it's like, man, my family doesn't even cry when I leave. I've known these people for 2 weeks, and yeah, it was amazing and unique, and it's something that I didn't know before going there, but it now it's something that I'm looking for as well. I'm always surprised. Like, I've seen cruisers pull up to an anchorage that had a village there, and then they never leave their boat, and then go off to the next anchorage. And yeah, that's amazing to me, because that's the first thing I want to do is go see who's there, and you get mixed receptions too. And but I always want to see. I always want to see what's there and how they live, how they get water, what they do for food, and yeah, it's always really interesting to me. Yeah, I just appreciate it, and I appreciate different ways of life. I don't think the Western lifestyle is good for everybody. I've seen places like in Fiji where islands with hotels on them, all the workers live in these little shanty towns, like on the backside of the island in some horrible place. Or the islands without a hotel, the people live very well. They have their own farms, and they go fishing, and they spend all their time with their family. And in this case, the westernization proved to be pretty bad for them, for the Fijians. And then where you go to other islands and they don't have that, and they live very well and very comfortably. And so I like seeing just something different. Yeah, it was just always a constant fight, and part of the reason that the boat became in such disrepair when I had it was I was constantly fixing the engine and transmission. So that's where most of my money went, which means the rigging wasn't getting done. I wasn't getting new sails and other things that the boat needed. And once I got to Thailand, so I hauled it out, and I had zero money. Didn't know how I was going to pay for the haul out even. And my girlfriend at the time convinced me to do a crowdfunding. Then I talked to like one of the mechanics there at Krabby Boat Lagoon, and he was really honest. Even though he was going to be the one benefiting from the work, he said, you shouldn't put this much money into this boat. He says there's a boat right next to yours that you could pay probably $25,000, and you have a much nicer boat that's ready to go. And so I contacted the owner of the boat we're sitting on now. By this time, I had already, within like a couple of weeks, I raised about $15,000 on the GoFundMe. And so I upped it to $20,000 to try to get this boat, along with selling my boat for $5,000. So my boat sold pretty much right away. The owner of this said he wanted to think about it for a little while, so he spent about a couple of days, and he got back to me. He says, he says, I think what you're doing is great. He says, and I think this would be a good boat for you. And he says the extra, money that I should get for this really means more to you than it does to me. And so he actually sold me the boat for $20,000. And here I am. Patreon is I have mine set up as a monthly donation. So you can pick whatever you want, $1 or $5 or whatnot, and then it'll just come out of the account every month. And then there's a list of things on the site that I give back to the people who donate. Now I'm hoping that I could continue to do crowdfunding to keep the boat maintained and keep going. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's kind of how it was set up. It was set up for people, even singers and people making their own videos and stuff. And I can't really sing or make videos, so I'm trying to do something else. I would say for people to take more time for themselves, spend more time with your family, go do more things, and don't work so much. Value your time more than money. We're only here once. And my life is, I would say no better or worse than it was before. It's definitely different. Phantom limb pain and other things that are frustrating. Broken prosthetics. You can see this thing is pretty much completely redesigned. Like this used to, like this stainless piece on the bottom I had built in Thailand. Like all these little nuts and bolts are different. This used to be like some weird contraption. This hinge has been replaced. This used to be a valve on here. And so it's one thing I've learned to do is fix these at sea. Here's my backup. This is Peggy the peg leg that's held together by 3 hose clamps. So yeah, so there's struggles there. Like prosthetics don't last very long. Insurance companies don't like paying for them. And so it's always tough to keep walking even. I look back and I look at all the money I spent on my car and my van and my motorcycle and the boat, and time and money. And the money was time as well, times I spent working to support all these things. So it would be nice if a few more people threw the dock lines and took off and did this, because it's not that tough. And I mean, I could do it with one hand, so I think everybody else can as well. Yeah, I've grown up in that, jobs, college, career, retire in your 50s and 60s or 70s. Yeah, I'm thankful I went a different way, because I probably would have done that without the accident. Even then, I worked a lot, and I spent a lot of money that I didn't have to. It was only through going broke that I just wanted something different. I didn't want to fight to get back to where I was. I wanted to just something completely new. So I was bartending once, and this elderly gentleman came in. And he told me that, they tell you your whole life to save for the golden years and the age of retirement, and that's what all the hard work pays off. And he said, golden years my ass. At my age, you're too tired and you can't really enjoy the time that you have. And he says he would have preferred to go out at a younger age and go experience life.
Why sailing?
Why, yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not a big fan of sailing. Seems like the wind's always against you, and it's always a little bit rough and always a little bit uncomfortable. But I came across a website a long time ago called the Slocum Society, and it was all people who had set records for sailing around the world solo. And I didn't see a double amputee on there, so I thought I'd give it a shot.